Hello humans, it's just Martine, and last week I challenged myself to see how much reading I would get done if I wasn't allowed to watch any YouTube. I've done challenges before that have focused on screen time or social media time in terms of taking that time and giving it to reading. But one thing that those challenges have never really accounted for is just how much YouTube I actually consume. Because those screen time videos are looking at screen time on my phone, and I honestly rarely watch YouTube on my phone. When I do, it's usually YouTube Shorts. I'm not watching full-length YouTube videos on my phone. I'm usually watching them on my laptop, which is right in front of me right now, hence why I pointed this direction. And my laptop screen time is not factored into any of those videos. The point is that those challenges have never taken into account what would happen if I took the time that I give to watching YouTube and gave it to reading instead. So last week I wanted to give it a shot. I would say YouTube is my number one social media. It's the social media that I much prefer scrolling through, whether it's watching videos from my watch later list or random ones that pop up on the homepage. I love a good YouTube video. It's how I follow along with some of my friends. Watching YouTube has contributed to the beginning of many of my closest friendships. I prefer slightly longer form content compared to, say, TikTok or Instagram Reels. And as a person who makes videos myself, it's nice to watch others for inspiration. So yeah, I watch a lot of YouTube. So the challenge I gave myself last week was simple. No YouTube. None at all. The only reason I logged on to YouTube last week was to upload my Sunday video. Other than that, no YouTube. I wasn't checking my subscription box, and I definitely was not watching videos because I wanted to see how much reading I could get done if I wasn't doing that. I also did have a rule that I didn't want to be artificially replacing my watch time on YouTube with watch time somewhere else. One of the main reasons that I watch TV, whether it's Netflix or Disney Plus, is if nothing is catching my attention on YouTube. So I didn't want to say, okay, if I'm not watching YouTube, then I'm just going to watch Netflix instead, because that would be against the point of the whole video, right? That would be time that normally I was giving to YouTube, not Netflix, so I was going to give it to reading, or try to, or like life in general, being aware of my surroundings. As a baseline rate, I checked how many hours I had read the week before. It was 26. The whole point was to see, am I going to beat that number of 26? Now, I didn't know that number before I started the actual challenge. That's just something that I looked up afterwards. So it's not like I had 26 hours in my mind as something that I was like trying to beat. I just kind of read organically through the week without watching YouTube, of course, and saw how it panned out at the end. So my challenge started on the very first day of September. It started bright and early. My alarm clock went off at 7 o'clock, and things got rolling from there. Happy to report that so far I'm getting a lot of reading done in this challenge, because one of the habits that I have when it comes to YouTube is when I wake up before it's time to take my medicine, I usually sit in bed and watch YouTube. And I can't do that this week, so instead I read. And I read 100 pages of a book, and I got 25% of the way into it. That's great for my TBR. Aside from just taking time that I already know that I give to YouTube and giving it to reading, this week was also an interesting chance to realize some of the unconscious ways in which YouTube has infiltrated my habits or routines in my life that I hadn't realized previously, because whenever I went to do those things, I would realize, oh, usually I'd be watching YouTube during this time. It's time to eat breakfast, and I usually watch YouTube while I eat, but I guess I'm just gonna be reading? That's weird. Now, originally, when I conceptualized this challenge, I was mainly thinking about how not watching YouTube would impact my reading. Obviously, that's kind of the whole concept of the video. But what I did not think about was the way that not watching YouTube could affect me, like, in general. But starting on day one, I could clearly notice that some things were shifting inside of my brain. It's just past 4 p.m. and I've been so productive today. I don't know if it's because of the no YouTube challenge. Like, there's just significantly less social media going into my brain because of that, or if it's some other reason. The Monday energies, but it is Labor Day, so like, theoretically, I shouldn't have felt productive today. I could have gotten away with taking the whole day off, but I just did like a 3-hour work session with one of my classmates. I worked some this morning, and of course, I've been reading like a demon. After all was said and done, I ended day one of the challenge with 4 hours and 32 minutes of reading. The Monday before, I had read 3 hours and 30 minutes. But on day two, I pretty immediately realized that challenge was the correct word for what I was doing, because I ran into a couple of issues. First and foremost, my reading material was starting to give me some problems. The book that I'm reading today is a high fantasy book, and yesterday I was reading a romance. And you know what? When your brain is tired and you don't want to think about anything, reading a romance book, it's not that much harder than watching a YouTube video. Reading a high fantasy book, much harder. And the second issue that I was feeling was that I was using up all of my brain power for the week. My brain is a little cooked right now, so I just think watching YouTube would be so much easier than reading in this moment. See, Mondays, I generally have higher energy than any other day of the week. I start Monday ready to get stuff done, ready to have a productive week. I use a lot of energy on Monday, and then things go downhill the rest of the week. And on day 2 of the challenge, I was already starting to feel it. Nevertheless, I persevered. I ended day 2 with 3 hours and 24 minutes of reading, compared to an hour and 37 minutes the previous week. In other words, day 2, in terms of reading, smashing success. But if the feelings that this was a real challenge were storm clouds on day 2, we are into a hurricane on day 3. I originally thought that the hardest part of this challenge was going to be the weekend. I have a lot of free time on the weekend, and I watch a lot of YouTube during that time. So I was like, surely the weekend's going to be the most difficult part. But I had not considered what would actually be the most difficult thing, the thing that I would run into on day 3, a bad mood. It's Wednesday evening. I just got out of a meeting that was over an hour long where I was getting statistics help from one of the quant professors. So my brain hurts real bad, and I'm in kind of a bad mood, which is a mixture of the weather. It's been raining all afternoon, and I did get rained on a bit earlier, and the results of the statistics meeting, because although helpful, it led me to some conclusions that I did not like, and I feel a little out of my depth in general. And so reading is not what I want to be doing right now. I want to eat pizza rolls and watch YouTube. That's what I want to do. No brain required. And granted, some of the books that I'm reading right now don't require much brain, but reading does require some brain. And I don't have brain that I want to give right now. I have no spare brain. So I ended day 3 of the challenge with 2 hours and 43 minutes of reading. And it was actually the first time where the week before I had read more than I had during the challenge week. The week before, I read 4 hours and 15 minutes on Wednesday. Now, to be fair to my challenge week self, my schedule was a little wonky. See, normally on Wednesdays this semester, I'm commuting for about 2 hours, and usually I read during that entire time. But this week, I had classmates come along with me as kind of a field trip for my Wednesday commute, and I didn't end up reading on the commute at all. So it only makes sense that my number was lower when I didn't get to read on my 2-hour commute than when I did. And luckily, after the hardship that was day 3, day 4, I was still not feeling it completely, but I could at least see the point of what I was doing. I was at least feeling some of the benefits, or was like willing to acknowledge any of them, even if it was just that I was reading a lot. Maybe I wanted to watch YouTube this morning, but now I'm 60 pages closer to the end of a book. And that feels like a victory. And I think we saw the impact of the time that I would have given to YouTube pretty clearly in day 4, because on day 4 of the challenge, I read for 3 hours and 43 minutes compared to 2 hours and 43 minutes the previous week. So basically an additional hour of reading. Although, to be fair to my past self, Zumba was canceled, so I went on a run instead, which I think took like a little less time than Zumba. So there are confounding variables, to be fair, in all of this. This is not perfectly scientific. And then day 5. By day 5, I could see the light at the end of the tunnel, and even though I was still struggling with the fact that I really wanted to watch YouTube, I could acknowledge to myself the benefits that I was feeling from doing this challenge, and I firmly believed that it was the right decision to do this challenge, whether or not I ended up reading more. I know this challenge is really good for me. I've felt the benefits of it so far. But it is just strange because it's a huge deviation in my routine. I was having less trouble getting out of bed in the morning. I was being more present and mindful of my decisions because since I was deviating from routine, I had to be a lot more aware of not sinking into my routines. I had to do things a lot more conscientiously. I was also having to face these tiring and tough moments like I had on Wednesday evening and actually do something about them and feel my emotions instead of just mindlessly slipping into YouTube and not working through those feelings. And to go along with the fact that I was feeling all these benefits, Friday was my biggest reading day of this whole challenge. I got 6 hours and 16 minutes of reading done compared to 2 hours and 49 minutes the previous Friday. And to be honest with you, I don't have any clips from the weekend. I don't know if it was just that I was living my life and had nothing interesting to say, but I just didn't film anything for this video in that time. I edited my own YouTube video, I ran errands, I read a good amount, and I focused on some other creative things like working on future video concepts or fleshing out ideas for future videos. Things that I often don't have the energy to do, that energy felt readily available when I wasn't giving some of my energy over to YouTube, or even better, wasn't using YouTube to try and recharge my energy instead of something that was actually restful. Obviously, I still wanted to watch YouTube, and so I felt some of that conflict, but I also knew there were only 2 days left in the challenge, and so I just kind of had to buck up and get through it. According to my notes, on day 6, I read for 5 hours and 26 minutes, but the previous Saturday I had read more by just a couple minutes because I read for 5 hours and 32 minutes the previous Saturday. And then Sunday was really weird because I actually read significantly less on the challenge Sunday than I had the previous Sunday. I read for 4 hours and 4 minutes compared to 5 hours and 37 minutes. This is partially because the Sunday before was the last day of the month and I was trying to finish a lot of books before the month ended, but it's also just because that's how I felt about reading. I'd read a lot during the week, I wanted a little break, so I read a good amount, but I also did other things. I had lots of good conversations with family and friends on that Sunday. I think I took a really great run. I'm trying to remember now. So overall, I just kind of lived through that weekend. And I actually found that it was a very restful weekend, all in all. Do I think that not watching YouTube contributed to that? Maybe. On Monday, when I went back to YouTube, what did I miss? Well, my watch later went from 141 videos that I actually want to watch to 181 videos that I actually want to watch, so I technically added 40 videos from the week of watching that I missed. That's basically all I missed. What did I gain though? Well, for one, I did read slightly more. I read a total of 30 hours during my challenge week compared to 26 hours the week before, so I gained 4 hours of reading. But I also got a lot more non-reading things that I wasn't expecting going into this challenge, because again, when I thought of this challenge, it was about reading for me. But I got a lot of other stuff aside from those 4 extra hours of reading. My rest was more restful. My mornings were honestly way less depressing. I felt more present in my everyday life. I did feel like in some moments I had more energy to do things that I would normally have put off. I coped with things more healthily because I had to feel my feelings and deal with them instead of just exclusively running away. And I spent a lot of time thinking about or realizing what kind of feelings lead me to click over to YouTube and start watching. And that's allowed me to be more mindful about my emotions and my YouTube watching now that the challenge is over. Basically, I learned that taking a break from watching YouTube was really, really good for me, even though it was hard at times. Coming out of the week-long challenge, I'm not going to stop watching YouTube completely. I just enjoy it so much. Again, it's inspiration for my own videos. I don't think it's the worst vice ever to have in the world, but there are some things that I'm going to be taking from this. The number one thing though is that for right now, I'm going to try to continue avoiding watching YouTube first thing in the morning. Instead, I'm trying to read in bed. It's proving just to be beneficial for my mental health, so it is what it is. And now that I've gotten used to it, it's easier to stay awake while reading in bed in the morning. Although I have to say that sometimes the feeling of like, I'm getting tired, I want to fall asleep, is what's pushing me out of bed and into my day. So that was my week off of YouTube. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a big thumbs up and comment down below which social media do you spend the most time on, and would you ever try this challenge with that social media? And subscribe for more bookish and college lifestyle content, and until next time, bye humans, bye!